morning, everyone heard your lawyer, your attorney, Jeffrey, say that you were subjected to duress and undoing.
Yes.
Where did that occur?
It occurred there where I was, in the Hacienda Gardens apartment complex, and it also occurred in California, in Hemet, California, at the Scientology International base.
Those two places.
Yes.
Any other?
It also occurred in other buildings in Florida, Clearwater, Florida.
You and I have talked before today, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so I know a little bit of what's coming.
Yeah.
In the year 2005, what was the first thing that you witnessed that personally horrified and frightened you?
I witnessed Mr. Miscavige physically punching in the face and wrestling to the ground another very senior executive at Scientology International level.
In 2005, did you learn about the hold?
Yes, I did.
How did you find out about it?
Mr. Miscavige briefed me about it and explained that he had put about 40 executives of Scientology International basically locked up into a room called the Hole. And he took me there personally and showed me.
Did Mr. Miscavige tell you about things that he did to humiliate and punish executives such as yourself and others?
This is totally ridiculous. And the whole thing is him testifying.
I'll be happy to ask a non-leading question, Your Honor. What did Mr. Miscavige tell you about methods employed to discipline high-level persons such as yourself working in Scientology?
Excuse me, before a chance at that, I have a break for Ms. Cook, Mr. Miscavige, did you work for FSO?
No, he did not.
Objection, your son?
I'll ask a little lead-in so Your Honor can evaluate that. Ms. Cook, what is Mr. Miscavige's role in the world of Scientology?
His position is as chairman of the board of the Religious Technology Center. And the Religious Technology Center, from my understanding, is an organization that is established simply and solely to protect and ensure that the trademarks and service marks of Scientology are kept secure.
And so you've been describing for us that you were out in California working for extended periods for the Church of Scientology International.
Yes, that's correct.
And who directed all of your activities while at the Church of Scientology International?
Mr. Miscavige.
And as we go, we're focusing on the 2000s, when you were in Clearwater, Florida, running the flag service organization there, who would regularly direct you as a superior in your job duties?
Mr. Miscavige.
In your experience, in depth, in the inside of the world of Scientology, is there any barrier between any of these organizations in terms of Mr. Miscavige's authority and instruction?
No.
Your Honor, then I would ask a question about what was said by Mr. Miscavige.
Your Honor, I don't think the established would be authority or legal appointment.
Please do so. Stand up and say. While you were working out in California, if we go to the year 2006, was there a fellow that went from Florida there to work with you named Mark Gingen?
Mark Kingman Nelson,
Mark Gingen Nelson, G-I-N-G-E?
yes,
Is that correct?
yes, that's correct.
What happened with Mr. Nelson, who came with you from Florida to California to work at International?
He attended several meetings with me, with Mr. Miscavige, and he also, we also went together when we went to the international base. He witnessed this physical abuse that I mentioned earlier about about Mr. Miscavige hitting another executive, and he also came with me to when I was shown, when we were both shown the hole. And when we were in LA, after that, he
You know, I hate to break it up, but this is a very lengthy area.
When you were in Los Angeles with Mr. Gingen Nelson, what happened that you observed?
Okay, he was, he originated that he did not agree with physical beatings or this room, this locked up, you know, these executives being locked up. And for this, he was beaten up by Mr. Miscavige's assistant. Her title is a communicator. And he was also beaten up by two other guys that were there in the meeting with us, which was Henning, I can't remember Henning's last name, and Francois de Juste. They were two pretty big guys, and he was actually taken back into a room, and he was beaten up physically for a couple hours.
Anything else happen with Mr. Gingen Nelson on your trip to Los Angeles?
Yes,
What was that?
he was made to lick the bathroom floor clean. Well, lick the bathroom floor for over at least a half an hour.
Did you ever begin to receive, or were you ever the recipient of any violence?
Yes, I was.
And describe that for us. Did it begin all at once in full force, or did it begin in small ways?
It was small ways, different incidents of it. One time I was called into a conference room and asked some questions, and he ordered his secretary to slap me, and she slapped me so hard I fell over into the chairs. One time Mr. Miscavige ordered his communicator to break my finger if I didn't answer his question.
Was anything done with your finger?
It was bent back very hard. It was not broken.
Did you ever have things like water thrown in your face or that sort of thing?
Yes, there were numerous times when a bottle of water would be picked up and the water just, thrown at you.
Now, these things, getting ordered to have someone slap you down or throw water in your face or break your finger, what were the horrible crimes that you would commit that would cause these punishments to be inflicted?
Just not answer a question fast enough, or maybe your expression displeased him. Maybe you were smiling, or you shouldn't have been smiling, or you were, maybe you were glaring at him, something like that.
Did you ever witness any incidents of violence or torture or degradation in England?
Yes, yes, I did. I was at a meeting with Mr. Miscavige and that he was having with several top international executives. And then he ordered a man named Bob Keenan to take those other executives and throw them into the lake. At the time it was in October, and it was very cold in England. And anyway, so they were taken down to the lake. I was told to go with them. And they weren't actually thrown in by the guy that they were made to go into the lake, ice cold lake.
Did you yourself ever receive physical violence from Mr. Miscavige?
There was really only one physical incident where he was very angry and he walked around a very long conference table to get to me. He was yelling and he came up like as if he was going to choke me, but he didn't. He basically grabbed my shoulders and shook me while he was yelling at me.
Let's talk about how you ended up in the hole. When did that happen?
Now, this is something, sure.
Have you told any of the circumstances of her going in the hole or what happened to her? When was it that this happened?
So that was in May 2007. I was at the international base. Mr. Miscavige was not there, but I was supposed to be doing numerous things at the international base under his directions. He was, I was on the phone to him every day, sometimes several times a day, and there were certain things that he was very unhappy about that weren't done to his satisfaction. Anyway, I was on the phone to him. I was in an office. Someone was pounding on the door. Because I was on the phone to him, I didn't answer. I was trying to be on the phone and talk to him. And then after the beating stopped, and then someone pried the window open of the office that I was in, and two big guys came in through the window. And Mr. Miscavige said to me on the phone, "Are they there?" And I said, "Yes, they are." And he said, "Goodbye." And two men physically took me away to this trailer area, which is called the Hole.
Where is the hole?
The Hole is at the INT base. It's the international base, which is it's like a 500-acre area of land where all the international management offices are, as well as the like audio-visual productions and whatnot are also there.
And is it an attractive place overall?
Yes, beautiful.
Is it very rural?
Yes, it is.
And so that we're clear as we talk about terminology, this international base, this is the home of what's called the Mother Church.
Yes, that's correct.
You told us that the hole consisted of a couple of, I think, double-wide trailers.
Yes.
What made it a hole rather than a couple of double-wide trailers that people were living in? Describe it for us.
It had bars on the windows, and the one entrance was guarded by security 24 hours a day. And it contained in it, at the time that I went into the hole in May of 2007, there was over 100 top Scientology international executives that had been put there. And the hole basically was some kind of a slang term that had been coined long before I got there. And it was where you actually You ate there, you slept there on the floor, and, you know, you never left with the exception of a brief period to go take a shower and come back.
When you say slept there on the floor, did you have cots or bunks or some kind of beds?
No, you slept you were given a sleeping bag, you slept on the floor in a sleeping bag.
And what were the conditions like on the floor to sleep?
Well, there were ants, the place was infested by ants, so ants would crawl on you. And there was a 2-week period during that time when all the electricity had been shut off, as ordered by Mr. Miscavige, and this was, of course, in summer in the desert, and so the temperature in there was about 106.
What would y'all do all day long? You're 24 hours a day in the hole. What would go on? Did it have a routine or?
There was no routine. It sort of depended on different things, but most of what was going on were these bizarre confessions that are, I would really like to state that they are not any kind of standard Scientology practice.
And in the confessions, were you the only one that had to do confessions, or did others have to do confessions?
Everyone did them.
And were there any other forms of discipline other than the confessions?
There were times where there was beatings. There was a couple very violent times where people were, a couple guys were physically beaten up by many other men in the hole.
What did you
Being demanded to confess to something that they really didn't do, and so then it would drag out for hours, and they were being beaten and demanded to confess.
confess what? I'm not.
Well, in that particular example, it was Guillaume Meserve, who was the Executive Director International, and Mark Yeager, who was the commanding officer of the top, of really the watchdog committee, and it was demanded that they confess to being homosexuals and having homosexual activity between the two of them.
And then they were beaten?
Yes, they were beaten.
Did you get lots of good sleep there in the home?
No, it did not. There was, every night you never knew when you were going to be allowed to go to sleep. There were many times, I would say most nights, I was woken up during the night because there was a phone call from Mr. Miscavige, and in some cases I was expected to participate in that phone call, or maybe there was some project that the whole had been given to do, and we would go for some days around the clock trying to get it done, things like that.
Why didn't you just take off and get away from the hole?
It's not possible. It's absolutely not physically possible. Couldn't make it past security. The windows were barred. Right from the beginning when I went in, I obviously was trying to figure out, plotting how to get out. But anyway, it's just not possible.
When you had to go through these confessions, what sort of physical effects did they have on you?
Well, they had very heavy spiritual and mental effects. In terms of physical effects, I mean, you had to stand there for long periods of time. As I said, one time was for 12 hours. Sometimes it was only for 2 or 3 hours, but still it was, I was not in good physical condition at all. It was very hard for me to do. It was also you know, if you had the cold water being poured over you, that was also, you know, uncomfortable. And also at the time I had an unusual phenomena happening that I had not had happen before, and that I was very swollen. My legs and my feet had gotten very, very swollen to more than double their size. It was not like a little bit swollen, they were very swollen. And and so it was particularly uncomfortable to stand.
When those two men grabbed you and dragged you off to the hole, did you get to stop and pick up your medications and things that you might like to have with you down there?
No, I did not.
What was your situation as far as being able to take your medications that you needed and your supplements and that sort of thing?
I wasn't able to. I didn't have access to them. But at one point I did go to the security guard several times asking that I needed medical assistance, that I needed to get my medications, and that I also was very concerned that I was having pains in my chest, and I had these very severely swollen legs and feet, and I needed medical help. And after about the third request, someone came from, there was a person within the international base whose job was to be a medical liaison, and she came and interviewed me, and she did go to my room and get the medications that I had been taking. So after about 3 or 4 weeks, I was able to resume those medications. I was not allowed to go to the doctor to get these other things checked out, but I was given those medications.
Did you suddenly miraculously get better?
No, I did not.
So that's after about 3 weeks. How many weeks did you spend there all told?
About 7 weeks.
And would you give us some idea, in your own words, of after you're in there for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks, how do you feel as a human being?
You feel completely degraded, very, very sort of terrified that you may have to go through another one of these confessions, or maybe that you would get beaten up, or, you know, you're also, because you haven't been sleeping, you're in a horrific mental state.
Were you used to, in your life, getting beaten up? Was that something you were used to?
No, never.
And you were a 40-something-year-old woman with a very, very respected job.
Yes.
Well, how in the world did it come to be that you're not in the hole today and you're here in San Antonio, Texas? How did you get out of the hole?
I got out of the hole because I managed, basically there was about to be a huge event at Flag where I had worked all, you know, for so long. I've been the captain there for 17 years, and there was about to be a huge event that Mr. Miscavige was holding, and the preparations for that event were in trouble. The people that had been assigned to do them really didn't know Flag very well, and so I had been called out of the hole to sort of to review some of these preparations, and I communicated that I was very, very concerned about this, that I felt it would be a problem for the event, and through various communications and my proposals on how I could help do something about it, I was allowed to come out of the hole and return to Flag to help help do what I could to make this event a success. And after that, I was allowed to stay at Flag. So that was like on 27 June I came out, and I flew to Florida, and then Anyway, I'm sorry, I think I answered the
That's
question.
good. We need to break it up for question and answer for the court. Before we get back to Florida, I want to ask you a question, something I forgot to ask. All these confessions, confessing, what is the one big crime that has to be sort of confessed over and over again in different variations? I'm not asking a very good question. Does it relate to Mr. Miscavige?
Objection made.
What are the sorts of things that that generally speak?
To Mr. Miscavige, or you've lied, or you've somehow betrayed, your trust, these types of things.
And during all that time, while you were in the hole, and even maybe in the weeks leading up to that, were you having any communications with your husband?
No, during the time I was in the hole, you're not allowed any communications. So I wasn't able to communicate with my husband, my family. I wasn't able to communicate with Flag. I wasn't able to communicate with anyone outside of the hole.
To your knowledge, did anyone in the world, other than a few top people in the church, Mr. Miscavige and some others, and the ones that were in the hole with you, did anybody else in the world know that you were in the hole or that you were even missing?
No.
So there came a point in late June of 2007, I interrupted you in the progress of your account, late June of 2007, where there was something going on that really only you could do, and so you were allowed to get out of the hole.
Right.
Okay. So, did they just buy you a plane ticket and send you back to Florida, or how did that work?
No, I was escorted with, I went with several people at the same time. And when I arrived at Flag, a full-time, one person was put with me to be with me full-time to basically make sure I didn't leave. Even if I went to the bathroom, she accompanied me to the bathroom. She had a radio and phone and whatnot, so if there was any problem, she could have alerted security and whatnot.
And was she a Flag person, or was she with International, or what? Do you remember?
She was really a representative of International. She was not Flag Service Organization.
Right there with you in Clearwater,
Yes.
going to the bathroom.
Yes.
From the time that you went into the hole until you and your husband, I'm jumping forward a little bit, fled shortly before this October 19 video,
Yes.
when were you ever not escorted or watched or guarded?
Never. I mean, I didn't have after, I don't remember, maybe a week or two, I didn't have a full-time guard with me physically, but I was always in one of the Flag buildings. I wasn't allowed to drive anymore, so I couldn't drive between buildings. I couldn't, if I had to go somewhere, then someone had to drive me. And so I would go from the main work buildings to the birthing building and back again, with someone basically taking me.
When you got back to Clearwater, Florida, at the end of June of 2007, what was your physical state?
I was really a physical wreck. I was very, very sick. I was very exhausted. I was in a tremendous amount of pain, and I was also in a horrific mental state.
What did everyone know at Flag as to where you've been or what you've been doing?
They really didn't know. I think they knew that I had been at the international base. They had thought that I had been working on preparations for this big event there, which was partly true. They had no idea what had really happened.
Well, why didn't you just come back and start telling everybody? Gosh, you wouldn't believe they've got this thing called the hole, and you get beaten up and water poured on you and all that. Why didn't you tell everybody?
Because, first of all, it's something that is not covered in any L. Ron Hubbard policy that I had ever read. It was not something that I considered to be standard or okay.